they said, thank God my kid's not a drug addict. And I said, then you're who I want to talk to because it's not the drug addicts that are dying of this fentanyl poisoning. It's the first time users.
Hey, empowered survivors. Welcome to the Let's Heal Show. I'm your host, Beth Jones, aka the Healing Mentor. My mission is to inspire and mentor other survivors of trauma and abuse as they walk their healing pathways. I'm here to help you become fiercely devoted to your healing, turning your pain into your power. That's why this show is all about healing. And through our guests, we will explore healing in action. Sometimes I'll share my journey. Other times we'll hear from fellow survivors about their transformational healing experiences, bringing purpose to their pain and shining light in the darkness of this world. We'll also have conversations with gifted healers and learn about various resources and tools from those who support us on our journeys. So come on, everybody, let's heal. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Let's Heal Show. I'm super excited to have a very inspiring individual with us today. Mike Land has joined us, and I'm going to start off, Mike, by giving you the opportunity to introduce yourself to everyone.
Thanks, and thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Mike Land. I guess the main reason I'm here is because I lost my son. In fact, it'll be 1 month from today. It'll be 4 years ago that we lost him to a fentanyl poisoning. And so I basically have spent the past 4 years doing speaking engagements and did a documentary just sharing my testimony and sharing my memorial for my son at 25 national parks. And I'm now part of Texas Against Fentanyl. There's 7 of us that actually are area directors throughout the state of Texas. We all lost our sons pretty much almost the same year, kind of close to the same age, but we all kind of got together and we do speaking engagements at schools, churches, wherever they'll have us to basically do whatever we can to share the awareness. So that's pretty much me. I still have a regular job in the cancer industry, but they're very lenient on letting me do it whenever I want. So having a little break right now because of the holidays for schools, but glad to be here. So
Yeah. So much to talk about from that, which we will, but let me just start by saying I am sorry for your loss.
thank you.
I something that I don't have children, so something that I will never experience in my life, and I can't imagine going through something like that. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for your loss. I know a little bit of background there, more to it than that we might get to.
Yeah,
So all of your loss. I'm sorry for that.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The reason you're here today is actually because I'm very inspired by you and by your story. And this leads to the connection point, which I always think is interesting about how people meet each other. I don't believe in coincidences in our paths. And I think that when we meet people and there's more than just a passing moment when you meet someone, there's a reason for that. And you're one of those people. So you're here today because my path has led me to this show, which is called the Let's Heal Show, because it's all about healing. And that's what I like to talk about. But I talk about healing from trauma and abuse. And of course, what you have been through is in that category. But you inspired me. I started noticing you on Facebook for one reason or another. I know you've done a lot of your work to honor uh, your son Preston in national parks, and I love nature, and I've got this thing for state national parks right now. So I feel like Facebook might know that, and so it probably brought us together for that reason. But I think also because you're meant to be here today,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. So I really have been very inspired by you and watching you for many reasons. So we're going to talk about all of that stuff.
Okay.
It's great work that you're doing. Born from a terrible place, but it is a
Yep.
true pain to purpose story, which is very inspiring and good for you for doing that.
Thank you.
Great place to be in. So
Mostly about bringing awareness, but it's also helping me with my healing, like the show is about. It helps me heal and not sit there in denial for the rest of my life. So it helps me to get the word
yeah,
out and helps
yeah,
me to heal. So gives me
yeah.
a purpose, I guess, if you will. So
Yes, it does. And I see more and more of that. Those of us who are taking our pain and turning it into purpose. And I have a really good friend who started a support group in Hong Kong, which is where I started my healing journey. And she was very focused on um, femme or female survivors of any kind of sexual abuse and providing a support group for us. And she's moved that now to where she has a nonprofit organization that is all about prevention and awareness. And so I'm with you on that, right? I mean, the best way to stop a lot of the pain that we go through is
Yeah.
to prevent it, create awareness about it, and just prevent it from happening in the first place. So I think that's amazing work that you're doing. So it's really great.
And you as well. It's just, I mean, I've learned one thing. If you share your story, that's what makes a difference. Because to be honest, nobody can come at you and say, well, you're not doing a good job of, or you're not helping anybody out by sharing your story. Well, that's my purpose. I didn't choose, you didn't choose what happened to you, and I didn't choose what happened to me. So we
Yeah,
take that and we use that. And
yeah,
it's makes a big difference. I will say that. Not just for me, but the thousands of other parents that are doing the exact same thing I'm doing. So,
yeah, it does.
yeah.
It does for ourselves, but also the people that we touch,
Yeah.
hopefully helping them to
Right.
find some purpose as well and what they're experiencing going through. So yeah, I'm very clear that my life's purpose is all about every experience that I've ever had, the not so great ones, my healing journey, which has been amazing, and now my opportunity to do things like this. So it's I'm okay with it. I've
Yeah.
accepted. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
good place to be. So tell us about the memorials, the 25 Preston 7, what all that's about.
Well, I guess I can go back a little bit before that. So after he died, of course, it took, I want to say maybe 10 weeks to get the autopsy back. And we finally found out that it was a fentanyl poisoning. And at first, when I heard fentanyl poison, I was like, wait a minute, I use that drug in the cancer industry. Why would he? And then I looked more into it and found out it was a poison that was coming across the border, with the cartel. And of course, the first thing I did is I decided that I'm going to fix the problem. I'm going to be the guy that shuts the border down. I'm going to contact every law enforcement. And I probably yelled at every congressman, every politician I could, every law enforcement. And it never really hit me until my local sheriff called me in and he asked to speak to me. And when I said, I told him what had happened because his cousin had worked at the jail and that's how he had heard about me. And he said, well, you realize your son was murdered. And that's when it finally hit me as I said, wait a minute. He was, that makes sense now. It wasn't just a
Mhm.
poison. He was
Mhm.
murdered by somebody. And so since I couldn't do anything legally to close the border, I said, the best thing I can do is share my story and share what happened with my son. And that's when I decided I'm going to do these 25 national parks. And the way I did that is he had gone to Big Bend National Park prior to passing
Beautiful.
away. And he came back and he said, man, we got to go to some of these places. And that's when it hit me as I said, well, I'm a Christian. And I said, I look at this as God's nature. Nobody's
Mhm.
touched it. It's left alone. So what's the best way to catch people's attention? Let's go to some beautiful places.
Mhm.
And what I decided to do was I started 25 Preston 7. He was 25 years old when he died. And then, so I went to 25 national parks. The 7 comes from a multiple of things. It's the number of completion of the Bible. It's a number of letters in his first name, middle name, my first name, my middle name. So there's a lot of sevens.
Oh yeah.
I decided I'm going to ride my bike 7 miles in each park, number of completion of the Bible. And then I'm going to climb to the tallest peak of every point that I can get to and do a memorial. And I said, you know what? I'm going to share that online. And, I'm a guy, I'm a man. We're not supposed to cry. I don't want my man card taken away. So I basically just decided to put it out there and I started sharing it. And I gave myself a year to do the national parks. And I completed it in a little over 9 months. And by accident, I finished on 7/25, July 25th, which was just the reverse day.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it was a God thing.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I completed it. And so I just, I shared the story, but also during that time, is I asked people to give me names of loved ones that they had lost, and I would dedicate every ride or every hike to someone that had lost to a loved one to fentanyl. So I did that as well. Um, it kind of went, I'm not a social media person. I don't know how to do all this stuff. I just threw it on Facebook, and it caught the attention of some people. And I think a congressman here in Texas found out about it. He hooked me up with
Mm.
Stephanie Turner. at Texas Against Fentanyl, and she had just done a movie called Fentanyl Unlimited, and she was sharing the story about her son. So we actually started talking a little bit, and then we connected, and she helped get the law passed in the state of Texas that we have to bring fentanyl awareness to high schools, or sixth grade to 12th grade, and
Mm.
also help get the murder charge passed in the state of Texas. So we got together, and ever since then, it's her, myself, and five other mothers that got together, and we do events together. We go around speaking at schools, and and then we're trying to do whatever we can. And she's partnered up with a lot of people. I've partnered up with a lot of people, and we're just trying to bring awareness. But the one thing that always stood out to me is everywhere I went to do a speaking engagement, they all asked the same thing: "Where's Preston's mother?" And I said, "Well, she's grieving in a different way." And
Yeah,
to be honest, she grieved in a way that she didn't want to remember Preston as that kid that died of fentanyl. And I respect that. That's her way. But the other thing I started noticing, I was the only dad out there doing these speeches.
yeah,
And I started asking the mothers, I said, "Where's the father or your husband?" They said, "Oh, he won't talk about it. He's at home, he's taking care of the business and all that. He's being the man guy and just, taking care of business." And so I started noticing that. But the one thing that I came across is if these dads aren't sharing their feelings, it brings me back to my second marriage where we had lost a child as well, and it caused a divorce. And I think that that happens a lot now. And I found out that it's in the high 90 percentile rate that people that have lost a child will get divorced. There's no
yeah.
question about it.
There's another trauma.
Yeah, they can blame each other, or whatever, but it
Yeah.
causes issues. And so I started kind of the dad program, I guess, if you will, at Texas Against Fentanyl. And so I started sharing my story, getting fathers together, because that's the other thing is these dads, you can't, I can't go talking to my golf buddies about my son that died because I've never lost anybody. So it gives us a community of men to get together and share. They get it when I say, "Man, it's a tough day. I can't go watch a Marvel movie because it makes me think of my son, or
Yeah.
something like that." So gives us a group of men that we can talk to, and they get it. And sometimes we just get together and talk, and we don't even talk about the death of our child. We just chit chat, say whatever we want, but it gives us that group and that outlet, I guess, if you will, to share. So
Yeah,
that's,
there is a different level of understanding when you're
yeah,
talking to people who've been through what you've been through.
yeah,
There is. But I do find that I feel like in my work that I do now, as I talk more and more about what I believe trauma and abuse to be,
yeah,
um, when people hear me say it, they're like, "Oh, well, I have been through some things in my life," and we're all survivors. That's the
yeah,
commonality that we all have, because whether you really understand what trauma or abuse is and how it affects us, and that's the measure for me, is how it affects us as a survivor. So how we live our lives in response to what happens to us, the effect on us, right? Which for a lot of us, it's not great, at least for some period of time, and then hopefully people are have the opportunity like I've had to heal, and some of the work that you've done to heal, right? But that doesn't always happen for people, which is sad, which is part of our work, right? Is trying to inspire people to move on past it, right? And to have a healthy life. But I really, I tell people when I talk about trauma and abuse, one of the things that I always say is that it knows no demographic
yeah,
boundaries, and it really doesn't care who you are. And certainly gender is not a factor when it comes to
right,
that. I do feel like we live in a society, and maybe it's more pronounced in this country than in some others, but we live in a society where, as you said, men aren't supposed to cry, right? I mean, you're
yeah,
not supposed to have emotion or express emotion. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate about the videos that you've done and sharing publicly those memorials for Preston in the parks is your vulnerability. It's very raw and authentic, and you had no fear about sharing that. And I think that's commendable. It's amazing. And I'm very happy that you did that.
yeah. And it wasn't just, I mean, and a lot of, I didn't want to make it that, "Hey, I'm telling you how to be a great parent," because I'm
Yeah.
never going to tell anybody because there's no perfect parent out there. The only thing that I did is I could only share what I felt I did wrong. That I
Yeah.
look back now and said, "I wish I would have done this different." And hopefully somebody can pick up on that and say, "You know what? I'm doing that too." The biggest thing that I noticed is I was more of a best friend to my son than a
Mm,
father. And I'm
mm,
sure a lot of people can experience that. And you know what? Me and my son, me and my mother and daughter, we're just best friends now, but I forget to be a parent sometimes. And so I just shared what I felt I did wrong. I never wanted to say, here's how to be a great parent so you don't get into this situation. More along the lines of, here's what I did wrong. Don't make my mistake, at least, and give those examples. So
I
it's,
suppose you're that what you're talking about, being a best friend rather than a parent. Your son was 25, and so
yeah,
sort of at a point where maybe the parenting, right or wrong, maybe there's a belief the parenting isn't as crucial anymore, that
right.
child's grown. I don't know if that maybe plays into your particular experience and why he was that age.
Well, I think it started kind of in high school that,
Mhm.
he was, when he started driving, it was like, okay, he's kind of a man now. He can go back and forth to his mom's house to my house. I'm just going to let him be. But I forgot to really be a parent and I didn't discipline him enough, things of that nature. So he got away with a lot of stuff, to be honest. And I wanted to be that Disneyland dad, I guess, if you will. I didn't want him to hate me. I wanted him to like me better than his mom, if you will, sometimes. But it's, we all make the mistakes and I want to go back to the trauma and demographics. That was one thing when we were filming in the national parks, everybody kept saying, what are you doing? And I would say, well, I lost my son to a fentanyl poisoning. And every parent said the exact same thing. And if I mentioned this to you before, forgive me. They said, thank God my kid's not a drug addict. And I said, then you're who I want to talk to because it's not the drug addicts that are dying of this fentanyl poisoning. It's the first time users. And
Yeah.
because they haven't built up a tolerance, for opioids. So they're not the ones dying. And so people are like, and then they see Preston's picture and they're just like, that's your son? And I said, yeah. I said, what did you expect? A kid with a needle hanging out of his arm living on the streets. And they said, yeah, pretty much. I said, no, just a normal kid, you know.
Well, and I'm hoping that everyone will go and everybody listening to this will go and check you out and see because your son is, I think, what everybody would think of as the clean cut, all
Yeah.
American kid, right? I mean, exactly. And so
He
it's,
looked that way at least, yes.
well, I mean,
Yes,
and
right,
probably was, right? I
right,
mean, the fentanyl poisoning, it just takes one dose and that's
right.
it, right? And whether it's just, a kid that picks it up or even adult that picks it up casually at a party or it's in something that they don't even know that it's in, right? Which I think is
Yeah.
a bit more of the problem, right? And so, and I mean, kids experiment. They do. I did it. I mean, I don't know if you did it or not, but we do that as we're growing up. And these days, experimenting can kill you, right? And
Yeah,
that's,
you can't, and that's the whole thing is I tell people now, I know that the biggest thing with fentanyl was one pill can kill was the biggest
yeah,
motto they had out there. But it's in marijuana now, it's in vape pens. And I've done talks where people get on their phone and they're starting to text their children at college. And I'm like, what are you doing? They said, I'm texting my daughter to let her know that marijuana is bad too, because
and
it's
vaping. I
everything
mean,
vaping. Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so I just, it is sad that I've talked to a couple of colleges and I basically say, yeah, pretty much you can't do anything anymore. You can't experiment. I'm sorry. And I'll pull up my Dr. Pepper or whatever and say, that's about the worst that I can do now is a Dr. Pepper, or something like that.
Caffeine, a little caffeine and sugar, right?
Yeah, a little caffeine and sugar, but it's,
Yeah.
and I'm always the guy and I start off that way. I try and be the bad guy doing the talks. Like I'll scare people. I'll say, listen, if you don't listen to me, I can guarantee what's going to happen. You'll go experiment, and then I'm going to get a call from your parents. And I especially do this in high schools. What I mean by that is if somebody dies in North Texas, I'm probably the first person that finds out in the North Texas about this. I said, so I will get a call from your family, and they'll end up joining a club they don't want to join. And I hate to be the mean guy, but I don't want any more friends. I don't want any more people joining our club. We always say our club, but it's not a cool club.
Not a fun club to be in.
Yeah,
No, definitely not. No, and that's, I think, the awareness work that you're doing. And unfortunately, it does have to be fear in some ways
right.
to get through to people, but it's
We
really
And
important.
we and I get it a lot now. Even when I was at Bible study today's Wednesday, yesterday morning. I go to Bible study every Tuesday morning, and when I went back yesterday morning, there were a lot of people I hadn't seen, and they're like, "Oh, I bet you're so glad that the border's going to be shut down. No more fentanyl issues." And I said, "I don't think you get it." I said, "There's enough fentanyl to kill the world over 10 times in the United States." And I said, here's the issue is we are the largest consumers in the
Yeah,
United States.
yeah,
So I said, that's part of the problem. Yes, is the fentanyl's here, but we got to fix the problem of us wanting to consume it. And I get off on the, a pill will fix everything motto. We live in that society now. You turn on the TV and there's a commercial that'll fix everything, a pill. And so you just can't experiment anymore. And so yeah, I don't mind being the bad guy. Just
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of I mean, the demand is clearly the issue. I completely
right,
agree with you, right? But the demand comes from the very thing that we're talking about, survival, right? Because people
right.
experience awful things in their lives, and one of the ways that they cope with that and survive with that is through some sort of a substance abuse, right? And so
Yeah,
it's kind of this, I mean, I could talk about mental health and how we could do
right.
better on to help people with mental health and emotional well-being for days, right? But that is a reality of what happens, and it's just sort of this vicious circle that we're trying to get off of, right? Where
Well,
we help people to be stronger, to be healthier emotionally so that they're not going in that place where that demand keeps going.
mental health is a big issue and the fentanyl factor. And I can even speak for the 7 or 8 of us that are with Texas Against Fentanyl. Our boys shared one thing in common. They all died right after COVID. What happened
Mhm.
to COVID? Depression, isolation,
Yeah,
and everybody's like, well, just get on antidepressants or whatever. Well, they're not clinically diagnosed. It's
yeah,
just like me when Preston died, everybody said, get on some antidepressants, that'll help you. I'm not depressed. I'm pissed off and I'm depressed because my son died. I don't need to be put on
you're
medication.
grieving.
But we live that,
Yeah,
oh, a pill will fix everything. And so they're just, people are used to just taking a pill for everything, even kids. Hey, I'm having a bad day. Just give me something to make me feel good. I got to stay
yeah,
up late tonight. Give me an Adderall. Okay, well, now it's going to cost you your life. So.
yeah, yeah.
Everybody's trauma, you spoke of trauma. I think back to trauma. You've had a bad trauma. I've had a bad trauma. Most parents would say you've had the worst thing that's ever happened to you, Mike. You lost a child. But trauma can happen in any certain way that you and I might think is nothing. You know,
Yes.
I got a B on my exam and I don't even want to live anymore. We might laugh at that and say that's not a big deal, but to somebody that could be an issue where they're going to say, I can't deal with this. I got to take something. I got to get high. I got to do whatever. And
Yeah.
bang, they're dead. So
Yeah, some sort of coping mechanism.
yeah,
Yeah, I talk about that a lot too, because I talk about it in the context of macro and micro traumas, right? And so the macro traumas are kind of the big things that we've touched on that I've experienced and you've experienced, but the micros are those daily things that we
yeah,
experience, right? And so whatever it is that causes us to have some sort of a reaction that's not healthy, and then if that affects us in a way that causes us to survive in a way that's unhealthy, then it is a trauma, right? And I think of it, a great example that I always give is getting to the divorce point. A divorce is a major trauma that we experience when we go through that. But leading up to and probably after, you're experiencing the micro traumas when every single day you're having an interaction with your significant other that's not healthy or that's painful or hurting you, right? And that becomes a macro. So I agree with you, and I don't think the measure has anything to do with what is the event or the experience. It's how we internalize it and live with it. That's the measure of whether it is a trauma for us. So
I,
the
I will say something positive though um,
good.
when I think of trauma now,
Yeah,
I will say like um, the ladies in my group, I call them my sister wives, but they all joke because I like to bike a lot, and I
yeah,
tend to get into a lot of biking accidents, and I've wrecked, and I've had stitches in my head and everything, and they're like, "Oh my God, you got to quit," and I'm like, "Really? This is nothing." So once we've hit that major trauma, I will say nothing else really bothers me. I mean, my car can get stolen today and be like, whatever. It doesn't
yeah,
matter. So that's a
yeah.
positive thing I look at is really nothing else bad can happen to me. I can deal with anything. I try and look at it that way as a positive note. But
No, it's a great way to look at it, and I agree with you. And so I still think that bad things can happen to me.
right.
But what I know today is that I'm much more resilient, and I have tools that are available to me that I have a lot of experience with that
Yeah.
I know are going to help me process through that much more quickly, right? And I also believe that, part of what I've been through in my life and what I will go through is my purpose, which I think you believe that too. And so I'm fulfilling my purpose now. And, does, the universe or God think that I need to experience more with that? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But I do know that I am going to recover much more quickly than I ever have in the past from.
Yeah.
But I also say to people, don't don't ask that question, what else? Because you might find out. You might get the answer
Oh
to
yeah.
that, right?
I'm the perfect example. My mother, she lives with me and she has Alzheimer's. She got diagnosed. She had dementia. We knew that and we finally got tested. And, so the year after Preston died, and when I started the national parks, I remember she would call me and she'd go, "Can you come in here in this room?" And I'm like, "I can't, I'm in Colorado or California." She goes, "Well, what are you doing there?" And I'm like, "I'm here for Preston." She goes, "What happened to Preston?" So having to relive that again with
Yeah,
her. So yeah, I mean, my mother and now having to deal with her Alzheimer's. So yeah, something bad will happen. I will say that's the end of my family, but other bad things will happen. I get that. But like you said, I have the tools now to deal with them, you know.
yeah,
So it it's I'm better equipped, I guess, to deal with things now, I guess you could
yeah,
say. So
yeah. It's sad to me when you say that, the end of my family, but you do know you're leaving an amazing legacy in this world.
yeah, and I'll be honest, I've got a best friend that I talk to all the time, and she goes, "What's the hardest thing?" And I said, "The thing that hits me is that that's it for my family. I mean, I'm the last land, in my family.
Yeah,
Preston, what I would hoped I thought by now he would have been 20, he's 29. I would have been looking at grandkids and stuff like that. And there's a lot of people that say, we'll just go out and have more kids. And I'm like, it's not like you can get them on Amazon or, and I said, and I always joke, I said, well, that means I'm going to have to go find a 20-something-year-old. And I said, that's going to put me in,
oh, that's a
quick.
whole nother issue, right?
Yeah.
At our age, oh no.
And I do, and I'll admit that the day I started working for this company, I started on January 4th, 4 years ago, and then Preston died the next day. And I remember like 2 months into my job, my boss said, "Hey, we're going to get everybody on a Zoom call, just introduce everybody, talk about your family and all that." And I said, "Do you mind if I skip that?" And he goes, "Oh my God, yeah, it wasn't the perfect timing."
Yeah,
People are now, they're like, "Do you care if I tell you about my kids? What they're doing?" I said, "No, please do." I said,
yeah,
"It's worse when you try and hide it. You
yeah,
know, don't say, well, I don't want to say anything good about my kid because you don't have any kids," that attitude.
yeah,
No, please. My best friend, since Preston died, she has four grandsons now that are 3 and under. So, and I love hearing about it, and
yeah,
I do tell people, I said, look, I look at Preston as I had a gift for 25 years is the way I look at it. God gave me Preston for 25 years. Some people will never have that gift. So I take that as a gift,
yeah,
I wish I would have had him longer, yes, but some people would never have that. So
yeah.
the gift that I had. So
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you, I didn't ask you when we were talking before, but just this question just came to mind. So, because I get this, right? So when I share with people what I've been through, you can see the moment of reaction on their face, like, oh, what am I supposed to say to that? How am I supposed to react? And so I've had people who've said to me, because of what I do now, help me, like, how would I respond to you? Like, what would be okay? So do you get that question? And what do you tell people?
it's like when I say, like if I just, oh, but by the way, my son died, how do they
Yeah.
react?
Yeah.
Um, Most of the time it's, I'm sorry, but usually I try and preface it by saying, um, well, I have a son that he died of a fentanyl poisoning. So I just get it out there what had happened to him
Yeah.
like that. But I do remember at Preston's funeral, there were, I think about 150 people showed up and it was actually snowing and it was during COVID. So I was surprised anybody. But after about the fourth person that walked up and said, "I'm sorry, I don't know what to say," I finally just said, "Be glad you don't." And I've talked to every parent now. And the one thing that most people can say to us is just say you're sorry. You
Yeah.
know, and I had people at my church that said, "Oh, he's in a better place." Well, that doesn't mean that I still miss him. I still want him here. Everybody tries to say the best thing. The best thing you can say is, "I'm
Yeah.
sorry."
Yeah. Yeah. It is awkward though. I do find people do struggle dealing with us, like how
Oh,
do you
yeah.
respond to whatever you've said, right? So, but I have had people ask me that, like, teach me, like, what's the right thing to say? And I'm gonna say, well, I mean, it's, first of all, whatever you're gonna say has to be like genuine, right? And from the heart, right? And I don't need some kind of superficial comment, right? But I'm sort of, I think we at the same point you're at now as well. I
Yeah,
want to
I,
diffuse
I
it from the beginning, right? And say it's okay. I'm good. It's all right.
Yeah. And I do, I preface now, whenever I get a call from somebody that has lost a child to fentanyl, I'll just say, first off, my condolences for your loss. I'm not going to try and tell you how to feel or anything like that. I'll just let you know I'm here for you if you just want to chat or whatever, vent, say whatever you want. I'm here for you because I've lived it and I get it. So
Yeah.
here, that's the best thing I can tell people now. And there are times where people have, I did a grief group where a mother lost her uh, son, and he was actually a resident at a hospital doing his residency. And he was the sad thing, it's a weird experience. The elevator came down and he was stepping out. The elevator actually decapitated his head coming
Oh
through.
my goodness.
And I'm like, I didn't even know what to say. It's not like a car accident, it's just something I'd never heard.
No, I look at the expression on my face. I'm shocked. I've never heard that
Like,
either.
wow,
Wow.
you know, and I do say that
Oh,
now to some people is because I get a lot of people asking about the sex trafficking and kids like that. Because even the group that we're with, Border 911, they focus mainly on the sex trafficking and the fentanyl.
yeah.
Tom Homan, ex-ICE director, and the ex-border chief and DEA. And I'm very thankful knowing that my son wasn't one of these kids that were sex trafficked and never found. At least
Yeah.
I know where my son is.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't even, I still can imagine there's worse ways to lose a child, of course. My son was lucky. He just died. His body just shut down. There's no
Yeah.
pain, no suffering. So I just, I don't want to say I'm thankful, but I am in a way thankful that I know where he
Yeah.
is because there's a lot of
Yeah.
people out there that don't know that have to deal
Yeah.
with this every day.
Well, I mean, there's a level of peace that you have that a
Yeah.
lot of
There's
parents
closure. Yeah.
closure,
Yeah.
yeah, that you have that a lot of parents don't have, and always, I suppose, if you don't have that closure, there's always the wonder, what if they're
Oh,
still
yeah.
still living, right? And that,
Yeah, that would be tough. I wouldn't even know how to talk to somebody that has lost a child physically, don't
yeah,
know, doesn't know where they
yeah,
are.
and don't have an answer. Yeah, it would be really tough. So yeah, so I get what you're saying. You've got that piece of that
Yeah.
closure that's there. So the when I was started connecting with you on Facebook and was um, following you a little bit and just kind of trying to encourage you on your posts. And I was telling people as I was getting ready to start booking guests for the show, I was like, I want him to come on, so I'm going to try. And I was like, you probably tell my friends, he probably thinks I'm a stalker. But then I realized after I talked to you, I mean, that's sort of, I mean, that's what you do, right? I mean, you're out there in the public sphere trying to draw people to you. And I think what strikes me about that, and it's the same place that I'm in, is bringing people to you who are having experiences that could be triggering, right? And so each time you get that connection, because when I first connected with you, you had no idea why, right? And I could have been one of those moms that was seeking you out, having experienced the loss
Right.
of my child, right? I think you've probably just come to expect that now when people reach out to you. But how does that sit with you when it happens?
Well, I'll tell you what, and I always talk about this, and when I'm doing talks or speeches, I always say, when my phone dings, it's, I can look at it and say a friend request or something like that on Facebook. And I always say, years ago, I thought that would have been cool. Oh my God, I got a new friend, something like that. Now it's like as soon as my phone dings and it's a friend request, I'm like, there's another parent
Yeah,
that has lost somebody. But I will jump back about a year ago. I started getting friend requests and I would make sure it wasn't some spam or something like that. And I would say, oh, you have 7 mutual friends. And I'd say, okay, well, that's cool. But then I click on it, and these people got sucked into the same thing. There's a lot of bots, I guess, out there.
yeah,
So I do have to preface with that. There's a lot of people that were, I hate to say it, they're like mail order bride type stuff, things of
yeah.
that nature. But now I do kind of look at people and see, do they have any posts or something like that they're real, so.
You're becoming social media savvy just like me, right? 'Cause
Wow.
I never, before I got into the last few months and what I'm doing, right? I mean, social media was a platform to connect with friends, right? And I'm also been very active on LinkedIn because of my prior professional career. But the control, like the level of control and awareness that I have to have now that I
Yes.
didn't, like, and because I post on a regular basis what I call the healing mentor moments. And they always have some aspect of trauma abuse or healing to them. And I keep getting these comments where I have to go and delete the comment because that's what it is. And I can tell it's probably generated by AI and but I do the same thing on friend requests you do. I'm now looking at it to see, are you like a real human that has more connections than just, in posts and all of that, which, yeah, I've been getting it I've been getting a lot of, divorced, oh no, sorry, widowed military officers who have also lost two, three, four, five children. I've been getting a lot of those. So I guess I've been profiled that way. You've been profiled the way you're profiled. I've been profiled. I think I have a soft heart for this type of a bot.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Well, I've got certain names out there. I will say that I'll walk into even at church, are you the fentanyl guy? I'll get that a lot. And
Yeah.
and then I get a call from like local authorities, and I guess I can use a little bit of bad language on this. Are you stir up shit, Mike? I've gotten that before.
I bet
And
you have.
and because I don't, there's some schools that don't want me to come talk.
Yeah,
And
sure.
in McKinney, where I live, they don't want to talk about it. And people ask, well, why don't they want to talk about it? And I said, it's bad for business. And I'll threaten them. I don't care. Whether it's Jobin or Maria from Channel 5 or Channel 8, they've asked me what's up with, and I'll tell them the truth. I said, it comes from the higher ups. They don't want to talk about it. It's bad for business. Plano did the same thing. But I got a call from the chief of police in Allen, Texas. I guess it was probably a month or two ago. And he goes, is this Mike? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, this is Chief Dye with Allen Police Department. He goes, I just want to make sure, are you the stir up shit, Mike? And I said, yes. And he goes, okay, because I get that people know that I don't, if it's something to do with fentanyl and somebody's hiding something, then yeah, I'm going to stir some stuff up. And I
Yeah.
will.
Yeah. And isn't that interesting with what we're talking about? And I've run into that as well. People get fearful to admit the problem
Oh,
is
yeah.
there, right? And they would rather just not face it and do the right thing to face it and deal with it, right? And to embrace what you're trying to do around the awareness and prevention.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
an interesting human response, I have to say.
it's to the point, and we know this nationwide that, I can say on average there's 100,000 people that die of fentanyl poisoning every year.
Yeah.
We know around the country because I've got friends and or acquaintances all over the country. We know that's about 20% lower than what it should be. And one
Hmm.
reason is they're hiding the numbers mainly, and we've looked into this. I can speak for it in Collin County alone. They're giving false numbers of deaths because what happens is if Preston was overdosing and I take him to the hospital and he dies at the hospital, technically he was under doctor's care. So he doesn't need a full-blown investigative autopsy. And the other thing is hospitals don't test for fentanyl. So if
Hmm.
they even test him, it wouldn't show fentanyl.
Hasn't shown up.
And we've got people, whistleblowers from the government, the administration that's currently in, that have been told the CDC in certain places do not give these numbers out.
Hmm.
We don't want these numbers out. We're trying to hide it. And we just know there's a lot of foul play. And,
Yeah.
and like my son, when he got his autopsy back, the first one, it said pending or something like that. So they'll just report that. They won't say
Hmm.
the cause of death, and then you get the autopsy, full-blown toxicology 10, 12 weeks later. Sometimes they won't report that because
Yeah.
it's bad for business, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of that out there. I mean, I spent a lot of years investigating things that were hidden within organizations for one reason or another. And there's a lot of human nature
Yeah.
goes into
But
that kind of decision making that's just not helpful.
but I also blame it on the other big issue that we deal with that I've learned a lot about is stigma and shame.
Oh yeah.
Parents. I mean, I was on the board of Serenity High School in McKinney, and it's a high
Hmm.
school for people in recovery, students in recovery. And it was, I don't know if it was Dallas Morning News or one of the news organizations. They asked me, they said, why aren't there more students there? We know there's more people in recovery. And I said, it's the parents. They don't want to be known as, oh, you're the one that has that kid in recovery high school. Makes the parent look bad.
Yeah.
Even to the point that there have been certain religions that I've spoken to that they're so shameful. when their child died of an overdose, they'd lie and say, "Oh, he died in a car wreck," because
Yeah.
they don't want it to look bad on them. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's so we got to get that stigma. I mean, I don't care when I did mentoring at my church for people with addictions, whether it was sex addiction, porn, chemical, whatever it was, food. Everybody out there has got a skeleton or something hidden,
Everybody does.
and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I found most of the people that are the worst are the ones that hide it the best. Oh, I hate to say like the soccer moms and people like that, but it's, you know, people need to get over the stigma and shame because it will cost, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, and I think that goes back to the just the acceptance of mental health overall as a society, right? And people just understanding that people are struggling for a variety of different reasons, and the way in which they cope is all over the
Yeah.
map, right? And they need help. They need to heal, as I would say. All those people are candidates that are ripe for a healing journey, right? They need to go
Yeah.
through a healing process to not be that way anymore and to be able to shed the
Right.
stigma that goes along with it. But I mean, you do make a good point too, though, about the support system around people, right? And making sure that, you know, those of us who are going through those things, who need to heal, or in that place where we need to heal, are getting support system around us. And if it's, you know, it's not a parent, or it's not your church or your place of worship for one reason or another that's supporting you, then something you need to move on from, in my opinion, right? And find other people to support you who will help you to get through. I think we talked about this before, right? I mean, nobody makes a choice to become an addict of anything.
No.
I mean, they don't, right? We talked about that. You're a kid. Oh, I'm going to become a drug addict when I'm a grown up, right? Nobody
Yeah.
does that. It just happens to us for one reason or another, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well,
And
I'll bring up a perfect story to addiction. That I'm dealing with a grandfather right now. I won't mention his name, but it's locally here in Collin County. I'm going to court with him in February. His granddaughter died at 8 months old of a fentanyl poisoning. And the mother actually put fentanyl in the baby's bottle on
mm,
purpose
mm,
and was trying to kill the baby. And people are like, what a disgusting person. I said, well, that's how bad the addiction is it is so addictive they will do anything in the world. And
yeah,
so she probably, and she's 21 years old and she's looking at life in prison. There's not an addict out there that has always said, like we were talking about, I'm going to try this addict thing first and see how that works out. Nobody chose in their life to do this. And everybody's
no,
like, God, what a horrible mother. And I said, you don't get it. That's how bad the addiction is that
yeah,
they're dealing with. So I still to this day have never met an addict that said, I'm so thankful I chose that life. You know,
yeah, yeah. Well, and I mean, and even, you know, I mean, being saying that that woman is a horrible mother. I mean, there's a reason she was in the place that she
exactly.
was in, right?
Yeah.
And we always want to blame it, right? Blame it on people, make them the victim, right?
Yeah.
And blame them for, you know, in some cases, I guess the perpetrator at the same time, right? In her case, but there's a reason she was in the place that she was in, and we don't take the time really to get down to the root cause of it and help the person to heal. Instead, we just have judgments against them and probably have law
Right.
enforcement processes that don't really support them in getting the help that they actually need, right? Which is that's that whole mental health topic I could talk on for a long time. Yeah. And well, pain to purpose. So I guess converting or moving from pain to purpose, which we've talked obviously a lot about your purpose, and I have some more questions for you on that. But I like to talk about the healing process.
Right.
So tell me about that for you, like how that has come about, the things that you've done to heal yourself, certainly purpose coming out of that, and maybe there's a blend of that for you, but can you talk a little bit about that?
The biggest healing for me, honestly, is I remember doing my very first interview, and I think it was the cameraman that actually asked, he goes, at the end of this, doing the national parks, what do you see as a success story? And I said that one person listened to me. And I said, that's the key is if one person can come back and say, hey, I heard about this Preston guy. It made me not want to go take a pill at this party. Somebody offered me something, I didn't take it because I didn't want to end up like Preston. Well, it's happened and it's happened multiple times now. And I guess when I go do the talks, and I always tell people whether it's, I've been with DEA agents. I've been with everybody, and there's been small events, and they expected it to be huge. And there's been huge events where they're like, "Do you think anybody will listen?" I said, "All that matters is one person." And I can pretty much guarantee you that every talk I've done, I've received something of somebody saying, "Thank you," or "Now I get it," you know. And so that's my healing process, is knowing that, what was it, 2 weeks ago, I spoke at a school district in East Texas. I spoke to 4,000 kids that day, and I got two emails through my website that said, "Thank you. I think you saved my life because I go to parties and people are passing around pills. Now I won't." So that's kind of my healing process, knowing that Preston's name made a difference. So it
Yeah.
gives me that purpose to say, okay, I can keep moving forward to keep doing this because I am making a difference. Am I going to
Yeah.
hit everybody? No, but you know,
Yeah.
that's how I
But you,
heal.
but you've saved one. I say the same thing. If just
Yeah,
one person hears my message,
yeah,
then that's enough. It
yeah.
is. Yeah. You've been through grief though, certainly. You have gone
Oh
through
yeah,
grief. I think maybe several times in your
oh
life.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll admit the first after Preston died, I my best grief counselor was whiskey for the first year. I remember that. I mean,
Mm.
I was drinking constantly, and then I just, and I was a Christian, or I am a Christian, but I became a Christian back in 2017. And I remember the day I was flying home, I said, "I'm either going to go to God or I'm going to hate God." And I did go to church the day I flew in, a little intoxicated, you know, and but I drank a lot that first year, and but then I realized this is not doing any good. It's not doing me any good, and I'm not able to share, the story of the awareness, and that's when I, I did the grief groups, the grief sharing, which was a
Mhm.
little different even because there aren't really groups of people that have lost children. It's
Yeah.
all I've lost a spouse or a grandparent or a parent. And most
That's
of it,
interesting.
yeah,
Hmm.
most of it are expected because nobody, there's not a lot of children die. We're used to burying our parents or grandparents.
Yeah.
So I just said, it certain things helped with the grief group, but it's like what was the biggest thing I always heard? Like if they lost a spouse, don't make any financial decisions for the first year. Okay, that doesn't really happen
No.
to me, so it really doesn't matter. But so actually, I've looked into starting a group at my church of parents that have lost children, and it doesn't have to be a drug overdose. It could be a car accident. My neighbor two doors down, he lost his daughter 10 years ago. She died graduation night in a car accident. No alcohol involved, nothing, just a regular car accident. And so it could be anything, that you've just lost.
Yeah.
Because
I'm
it's,
actually surprised to hear that there are not support groups for the
I
loss of
haven't seen,
children. 'Cause I actually know a few people who have lost
yeah.
kids.
And they
Yeah.
just tell you, just go to a grief group, but it's very different.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
grandma, grandma had cancer for 7 years. We expected her to die. It's totally
Yes.
different than, wait, my son just died. What are you talking about? It's
Yeah.
totally different. And so, so that's what I hope that is that parents that we can get together and sit there and share our stories and help each other out, 'cause
Yeah.
it is
Well,
different. So,
another great purpose that might be ahead of you.
yeah.
So which I know would be truly valuable to a lot of people who
It's a
could use that.
great ideas, but then there's still a lot of people that don't want to talk about it. And that's what I run into the biggest is, oh, that's a great idea. I'll be there. Nobody shows up.
Yeah, well, I mean, but that's why we do what we do and share our stories, right? I mean, sometimes I feel like what I'm doing is it's crickets out there
Yeah.
sometimes. And I also, I know the support group that I was in Hong Kong, I know for the first year, there weren't that, there maybe would be one person, some sessions that I went to that it was just me and the founder, but that over time, I mean, that work has changed. And so I think that the more and more we're out there publicly and we share our stories and we make it okay to talk about it and we make it okay to share our emotions about whatever it is, that people get inspired and encouraged to join in.
Well, we are hoping, and when I say we, especially the Texas Against Fentanyl and even other parents, is we are hoping that our voice can get more out there now, um, because if you watch the news, you never hear about fentanyl.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. Everybody, and it's like, oh, those are just drug addicts. They don't matter. And then when I tell people, every 4.8 minutes somebody dies, and they start realizing, hey, this is a big thing. And the one thing that
We're
people,
human beings, by the way. All those
yeah,
drug addicts are human beings.
and
Yeah,
I've been with DEA agents, Homeland Security, anybody in law enforcement, and they all say the same thing. We need the parents out there to do more work than we're doing. We can arrest people. And we'll never prosecute our way out of this. We'll never arrest enough people, but we need the families out there. And I will say, I'm not trying to make this political, but now that Trump's in office and part of our group, they're friends with Trump, they're trying to build some sort of task force where the parents can get out there and spread this awareness because
yeah,
we're the best thing that can get out there. And the more people we can get to, the more people we can share our story
I
to,
agree.
then people might say, wait, these people probably never thought their child would die. That could happen to me. That's what we're wanting to get out there is because none of us, we all look at it, we never thought this would happen to us.
Yeah,
We can get that to every person out there and say, it's not bad kids, it's not just drug addicts. I said, the year Preston died, there were 6 West Point cadets that went down to Florida, all died of a fentanyl poisoning.
yeah,
They drug addicts? No, they weren't.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it can happen to anybody and just give us a voice. But I'll even admit the local news here, they would say, well, we're only allowed to talk about fentanyl maybe once or twice a year on the news because it's a left thing. I don't mean to get political, but it is. They don't want to talk about it. And hopefully now we're going to get a better voice out there to start spreading the awareness. So
Reality that's in our society. We need to be talking about it. We need the awareness. Yeah.
that's why I'm the stir up shit Mike, I guess, because I don't care. I will just, I don't care who's in my, what are you going to do to me? That's the way I look at it.
We need to talk about this, right? We need
Yeah.
the awareness, right? Yeah, to your point earlier, what could you possibly do to
Yeah.
me at this point, right?
I mean, I guess I always joke. I said, well, I live in McKinney. I guess maybe they could say, well, we're not going to charge him school taxes anymore. Fine. Whatever.
Yeah, that might be a positive outcome,
Yeah.
right? Right.
Do that to
That's a
me.
good
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're inspiring to me for so many reasons, and I hope that people will connect with you and keep connecting with you. So I think, obviously your one of your platforms is the fentanyl awareness, but you're a guy, you're a dad who's had loss, you're someone who's very okay with sharing the vulnerability and the emotion, and people can be inspired by you for many, many reasons. And so I really appreciate all the work that you're doing. And thank you so
Thanks.
much for being here. I am going to put a link to the Texas Against Fentanyl in the
Okay,
show
great.
notes here, and also the 25 Preston 7. And go find Mike on social media on Facebook. It's where I found him. The videos from the national parks are beautiful, they're inspiring. And I hope that you'll go find them and connect with
Yeah.
him. And I wish you much luck with all your purpose as it
Thank you.
continues to grow. And I'll just say, I think you're inspiring, but you're also a very strong human being. I tell people that I believe in balance, yin and the yang, homeostasis, good and evil in this world. And I feel like there are those of us who might carry more than our fair share of the not so great things in this world. But I also think that God makes us strong and resilient to carry that. And
Oh,
you
yeah.
certainly had a lot, a lot. So you
Yeah.
have, I mean, that losing both of your sons and divorce, and now with your mom with the Alzheimer's, it's a lot for any one person to go through in their life. So it's an amazing testament to your strength.
Thank you. And I appreciate being on here. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
So,
it's great to have you. All
thank
right,
you.
take care. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.